for the previous webinar, except for the first one, the very first one that I forgot to record. All of the other webinars are on our YouTube channel. So the first part of this webinar is to talk about the cannabis business, the state of the legalization, and the most common methods to grow marijuana. Then I mean commercially, okay? I was joking about growing your marijuana at home. The second part will be when and why humidifier is required or humidification is required. And then some design tips. And the last part is just to remind you the product that we can offer to the growers. So first, the business for marijuana it was booming in Canada last year. Now it's settled a little bit down, but it's still a growing market and it will be growing. If you look at graph between 2017 and 2019, you see the growth is practically double, like every 2 years. The State of the Union. So you will see here in 2020 there will be voting in US, and the yellow states will be voting for legalization or not. Okay, so you will have the market expanding. So the one that are already legalized medical use or fully legalized the production and use of the marijuana will probably benefit from this, let's say, market opening. So the method of production, there is two main methods. The first one, indoor, it's the one that we see the most in Canada and probably in most part of the US. Why? Because before it was legal, and still with the legalization in Canada, there is a full set of regulation in terms of safety and security. So they don't want anybody to go inside and play around with this. So it's safe and secure. Usually it's unknown. It's a little bit like the animal labs. Nobody knows that they are testing animals, but it's there. The same for marijuana. Nobody knows it's a marijuana growing plant, and you just see trucks coming and going. And it's also on the HVAC point of view, it's known as a better way to control the condition, because you can very easily control the amount of air that you bring in here and the amount of air that you exhaust, and of course the humidity, the temperature, and so on. And the other way is to use take advantage of Mother Nature and use a greenhouse. So then marijuana, any plants growing needs a lot of light, and in marijuana it's not growing vegetable. They want to maximize the profits. So they want the most of the light that they can. Using greenhouse will bring this, but it will bring another trouble that will be the problem of heat. They will have most of the time too much heat, so they will have to exhaust a lot of air to compensate, and then they will have to bring a lot of dry air, relatively dry air from outside. So then probably they will need more humidity. And the benefits of greenhouse growing are depending on, of course, on the location. It's not the same in Chicago or in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or in California, where there is a lot of sun. The different growing stages are from seeding to flowering and then drying. Okay, so the first stage are cloning and seedings, and then growth. And they call it sometimes vegetative growth, and then flowering, and then they will make the crop, and then they will have to dry the crop a little bit like in the tobacco industry. So they will sort all the flowers, and then they will make the final product, the product that they will sell. So the webinar, I cannot ask you which part of the process do you think require most of the humidity? And you probably have heard the past Some people will tell you that, oh, marijuana, you don't need humidity because the plants are producing too much humidity. You have to get rid of the humidity. You need dehumidifier, not humidifier. This is wrong. In fact, it depends which stage. And I will draw a line, and this line, it's where you will need to bring humidity and where you will probably have too much humidity, and I would say in some times of the day. So in fact, it's the same for any growing of plants. It would be, this presentation can be applied to any other culture that you will do indoor. So seeding and cloning needs a lot of humidity. Why? Because the early stage of the plant needs a lot of humidity in order to grow, because the plants have no roots in the seeding, for example. So it will take and absorb most of the humidity from the little piece of it. So that's why seeding and cloning are the steps where you will see the highest humidity level for growing. So it's 65 to 70% relative humidity in seeding, with I put some indication on temperature, but again, one farmer to another will have his own recipe and will maybe change a little bit the temperature and the humidity level. It's not yet an exact science. Cloning, same temperature, but 70 to 80% relative humidity. And then the growth and the vegetative growth. At the beginning of the plant, they need a lot of. So that's why I put 70 to 40. So you start at 70, and as the plant is growing, you reduce the humidity level in the room, because then you will have too much humidity produced by the leaves of the plant. And then at the end of the process, during the flowering, then that's where you will need to dehumidify during the vegetative growth and the flowering. You will have to, in fact, you don't need humidifier. Probably just a plant will produce enough humidity, and even too much, so you will have to get rid of this humidity. And this is very important, to get rid of the humidity at those stage, because otherwise you will have mold, and you will have the leaves affected by mold or any trouble or disease or parasite that will develop due to too much humidity. The light is on most of the day. When I say most of the day, I mean most of the 24 hours period. I think it's 16 hours light on the period of 24 hours. So it's a lot of light, more than for a human being. That's what we need as a human being. And and during the light off, all those set points can be reduced. Okay, so the set point that you see here are for the light on. And then at the end, when they will crop the flowers and the rest of the plant, they will have to dry. And for the drying, they need 50% relative humidity. And as the plant is dead now, because it's removed from the soil, then you have to bring some humidity. In most of the projects, you will see humidifier requirement for as I mentioned before, for the two first stage, a little bit for the vegetative growth, and then the drying. There is two ways when you are working indoor. One way would be not to move the plant, and one way is to move the plant from one room to another. When they are not moving the plant, you have to think that the humidifier will sit in the room, and then it will be used for, let's say, a certain period during the growth. And then they don't need it, so they will switch it off. And I would say the biggest one will have dedicated rooms. So they will have a room for seeding, the room for cloning, and then they will move the plants. So then you can have some kind of stationary humidifier and a better installation, I would say. Let's look at the design tips. As I mentioned, there is two main method: the greenhouse that is now on my left, and the indoor conditioned air, which is now on my left hand side. So in the greenhouse method, they will use most of the free cooling they can because it's free. So they will bring a lot of fresh air, as I mentioned before. So that you will have an increased humidification load. On the indoor air, conditioned air, most of the time they will use a cooling coil, and cooling coil will remove humidity. So the air will condense on the coil, and then you will get rid of some of the humidity that are naturally in the air. So then this will give you again a need for humidification load. Our design tips are very simple. I would say it seems to be. We've been to a cannabis expo last year in Montreal, and we've been very surprised by other makes that were recommending some method of humidification that we know will not work. Okay, so you will hear a lot of different information, I would say. Some are valid, some are less valid. But what we know is that it's not a standard HVAC application. Everybody agree on this. There is this need of light, 16 hours during a 24 hours period. They have a lot of light. The light are bringing a lot of heat, so they have a huge heat load. This heat load need cooling, and then cooling coil or free cooling needs increase the need for humidification. So you have to take this into account when you calculate the load. Again, to maximize the profit and to boost the growing, they will sometimes inject CO2. Why? Because the plant are made to make the photosynthesis. So the more CO2 they will have, more leaves they will need, so the plant will adapt to this, so it will produce more leaves, and that's what the producer needs. For this, they will need to have the room in negative pressure, so you know what to do when you have a negative pressure room. So you need to exhaust more air to make sure that the CO2 will not go elsewhere, because it can be harmful for the human being. So you don't want to lose the CO2 too. And then when you exhaust more air, then you increase the humidification load again. So you have to ask all these questions to the engineer that will be in charge of designing a room if you have to work with such a project. As I said, we don't have, as I written here, we don't have a recipe that will work for all, but just be aware that it's not a standard at HVAC, and to ask for this kind of question. Is it a dedicated room? Is it indoor? This you will know what kind of cooling they will use, and the capacity of the cooling will give you eventually the need for humidity to add because of this. Do they have negative pressure, CO2 injection? Some question like this will bring you to feel if they have planned for everything they need. Most of the engineers are used to do humidification in duct, because it's probably 95% of the humidification is done in North America, and is simple, and they will have ducts in the grow room, because they probably have a constant need for cooling. And the very high humidity, we are talking about 85% relative humidity inside the room. So very high level inside the room and low temperature inside the duct. You have a high risk of saturation. Saturation is condensing. So you will have a risk of flooding the duct, and you don't want this. So if you see an engineer doing duct humidification for a grow room, with a relatively low temperature inside the room and very high level of humidity, please tell him, you will avoid you a lot of trouble. Tell him, it won't work. So the solution is humidity in space. It's very simple. You put the humidifier with the blower pack inside the room. Because they also need a lot of ventilation, a lot of air circulation in the room. There is, most of the time, this kind of fan around the plants. Why? Because they don't want, because it's high humidity, they don't want to have a high humidity spot bringing to mold, and so they need a lot, and for temperature and for humidification, a good and even repartition of all the air, they need to put this fan. So don't worry, the humidifier and the blower pack will be enough to put to mix the air inside the room. That will be helped by these little fans everywhere in the room. So let's look at the products offer that we have. The first one is again the electric steam humidifier with the blower pack. And we have done this, and it's in the catalog, especially for grow rooms. In fact, we got requests here in our local market. So it's on the floor stand. Some customer wanted to have even air water treatment. Air water treatment. They only have to connect. They still need to connect the drain, but the unit will drain very, I would say, almost never drain. But you have it. You need to have it as a safety, because in case of any event, the humidifier can drain. So you have one connection for the water that you connect to the aero station. It's already connected to the unit. The drain is, you see the drain pipe, so you have a port here at the bottom, and the electricity is coming to this box. So it's a one common power connection, one common water connection, and one drain, and it's done. The humidistat is already installed on the side of the unit. They just have to put their set point here on the screen, and it's good to go. And we even have a customer that put caster on it, so they can move it from the room when they don't need humidifier anymore. As I mentioned before, sometimes they don't move the plant, so then you can go bring the humidifier to another room. We don't recommend to put caster on the floor stand, but he did it, and it's working fine for him. And you have just to remind you that we have a scheduler here on the board controller. You can the producer can adapt and change the set point based on the time, and the time will follow the light on, light off on the room. So that's a feature that they will probably use. Or they can use also a different, a BMS with a full set on points and a remote station monitoring everything. But sometimes they don't have it, so they can easily make all the setup here on the humidifier. And the second product that can be that we would recommend, and then again it will depend. We don't have region on the technology and on this choice. But we will not recommend high pressure humidifier, because high pressure atomizer will have larger droplets. The ACA, compressed air and water, would be the one to use in any fruit and vegetable growing or marijuana growing. Why? Because I put fogging here because it's really a fog. It's very fine mist, 2 to 4 micron. You will have no risk of damaging the leaves, because the quality of the leaves are very important in marijuana production. So if you use a very large droplet of water, then you will have a risk of over humidification and brown stain on the leaves, and they don't want this. They will have to put all the crop to the dumpster. Some producer will use this. The other advantage of this humidifier is that you have the cooling effect. You know that we are using the adiabatic process for humidification in this case. So we will humidify and cool the air at the same time. So you can, as they need cooling in marijuana production, this is a good product because it will cool the air. And there is a low consumption of compressed air, but you still need a air compressor. And the last very important feature is that we are the only one offering a lifetime warranty on these little two nozzles that are, as I said, we are the only one offering a lifetime 15 years warranty on the nozzle. It will last. We do recommend our water, but it can work without water treatment if your water is good enough. The figure is 100 ppm of total dissolved solid. That's about the presentation, this topic. For next month, we have two offers to you for the topics. The first one is Startup 101. So the basic rules or basic method or checklist that you should apply when you are making a startup of humidifier. And the second topic, that's the one that you did not select for this month, would be the ISE, which is the steam to steam humidifier or steam exchange.